Welcome to West Texas Droning. Is it too easy to get a Part 107 certificate? Let's talk about it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, hello everybody. West Texas Droning here with a question, and it may be a controversial question. Is it too easy to get a Part 107 commercial drone certificate? I'm wondering about it. There has been some speculation and some comments here and there that it is too easy. And they point to all of the weird things going on that drone people are doing that makes us all look bad. If you remember the video I did on drone jerks, that got quite a few views, and I know it got some attention. And when you look at the 3,000 drones that have been confiscated during the World Cup series here in the United States, it kind of makes you wonder what the heck's going on. Do these people, if they have 107s, did they get them out of a Cracker Jack box? I mean, what's going on here? You're supposed to know the rules and behave by those standards. So I got thinking about it, and I thought, what if you had to do the same thing for a 107 that you did for a Part 91 private license? And let's take a look at what that requires. To get a private pilot certificate, you start out with getting a third-class medical certificate. That is from a licensed, authorized FAA flight surgeon. After you get that examination and he certifies you that you meet at least some minimum health standards to fly, then you apply for and get a U.S. student pilot certificate. That's a learner's permit. After you get that, you start learning to fly. Now you get an instructor and he has to fly with you and show you stuff. And after a certain number of hours, you get competent enough that he signs you off for a solo flight. You normally have to have about half of that 40 hours dual, which means with an instructor, and about 40 hours solo. Now that has to be logged in a written form, like a logbook. The instructor signs you off on each day you go out and fly. He puts the takeoff time, the landing time, how much you flew, what you did, and he signs it. And at the bottom of each page, when it gets full, you have to sign it and test it. This is accurate. So you also, of course, have to take a written test. And I think it's very similar to the Part 107 60 question test, and you have to make 70%, which is 42 correct questions. And then after you get that done, then you can take the practical. Now your flight instructor has to sign you off. He has to write in your logbook. He recommends you that you can and are skilled enough to take the practical test. The practical test is two parts. The first part is you sit down in an office at a table and a desk with an FAA examiner or an FAA designated examiner. That guy or gal will sit with you and ask you questions for 1 to 2 hours on everything they think you ought to know about operating a aircraft under the private pilot realm. You have to know a lot of stuff, weather, performance, all kinds of things, procedures. What do you do here? What do you do there? FAA regulations. They ask you a lot of stuff in 2 hours. If you get past the oral exam, then it's time for the flight test, which means you go out and get in the airplane and you demonstrate that you know how to file flight plans, check the weather, do an inspection on the aircraft to make sure it's airworthy. You run all the checklists, the safety checks. You do a start, taxi, takeoff, climb out, all the maneuvers, safety maneuvers, stalls, and everything. Return and land, and when they're satisfied that you are safe and competent, they will sign you off and you will get your private pilot certificate. Now, if you want to go beyond that, say you want to get a commercial, well, that's even stricter. You have to have a second-class medical. You already have to have a private pilot certificate. You have to have 250 hours of documented flying time. You have to pass a 100-question test. And then you have to take another practical, which is another 1 to 2 oral hours of oral examination, and then you have to go out and take a really tough flight test with an examiner. If you get that done, and let's say you want to go beyond that and get the coveted airline transport pilot certificate, Now you're talking about some qualifications. You have to have an instrument rating and probably a multi-engine rating. Then you have to show them you have a second class medical certificate, a commercial pilot's license. You had to have logged, documented 1,500 hours of flying time. You have to take and pass a 125 question test, and then you get another practical. Another oral exam, 1 to 2 hours, another flight test, a tough flight test. Believe it, I've taken them for 1 to 2 hours. If you get that all done, you finally get your ATP, as we call it, Airline Transport Pilot Certificate. What do you have to do to get a Part 107? Well, they say you should have to be in good physical and mental condition, but nobody has to verify that. You can just say, yeah, I'm good. And then you have to scrape up $175 and take a 60 question test and get at least 42 of the 60 questions correct, and you're good to go. Now, I'm wondering if there would be 427,000 Part 107 remote pilot certificates if, to get that certificate, you had to pass a second class medical. Well, it's commercial license, right? You can use a drone commercially if you have the 107, so maybe you should have to have a second class medical certificate. Maybe to start your training, you should have a trust certificate. Maybe you should have to have some supervised flight time. If you're flying your drone with your controller, maybe somebody there should be there to take it away from you if you mess up. How many hours should you have, and how should you log it? Maybe you should have to have a logbook. Maybe you should have it signed off by another 107 pilot. I don't think there's any 107 instructor pilots, but then, of course, you'd have to take your 60 question test. What if you had to take a practical? What if you had to sit down with an examiner and answer questions about flying the drone, the weather, the regulations, and all that? And then what if you had to go out and demonstrate to that examiner you actually knew your drone, you were familiar with the controller, you'd show them all the different aspects and features of your controller. Can you make it do this? How do you set that? How do you set return to home altitude? What if you had to do all that and then actually take the drone off, fly it around, demonstrate your proficiency, takeoffs, landings, and maneuvers? What if you had to do that? I'm kind of curious if that would reduce the number of remote pilot certificates that existed in the world, and if that would make a difference to people on how they treated that certificate. A lot of people, they just do whatever they want to do and go, nothing gonna happen. And maybe if there was more at risk, they'd be a little bit more responsible. Anyway, let's go fly.
Well, hey everybody, we're at a different part of the ranch now. We're going to do some more inspections. Invite you to come along. The wind has picked up a little bit. This may be the last flight of the morning due to these winds, but fortunately we're flying the Air 3 and it should be able to handle these all right. So invite you to go along for the ride.
So here we take off. A little drift there when it took off. I don't know why, but it happened. And then when I was sure it was stable, I went ahead and took it on up. Of course, you know where we're going. We're going to our 20 feet, right? And here's that takeoff. You can see that little drift there to the right. I'm going, That's why I hovered there a minute before I took off to make sure everything was good with the drone. Now we'll climb up to our 20 feet. For a return to home, and then we'll go do some surveying and sightseeing. Here we go. Now, most of the time I'm in normal mode when I'm doing this. Instead of sport mode, I still am insecure enough to want the obstacle avoidance. and it saves me from having to go out and walk in the heat, maybe 1,000 feet, to retrieve my drone. I'd rather have it fly back than do the walk of shame. And you'll notice haze in the air looking off. We're looking to the east right now. And what that is, believe it or not, and you may have seen this on the weather, on the national weather, that haze is actually dust and sand that has been blown into Texas all the way from the Sahara Desert. Now, we don't have it as bad in West Texas as they did in Central and East Texas. They had a pretty good concentration in the air of Saharan dust, and so that made a little hazy and made some pretty sunsets and sunrises too. But anyway, if you're wondering about it, that's what that is. You can just barely make out the little town off there to the west. As I said, it was getting warm and it was getting windier. And when it gets really hot, you know, maybe it's hard on your drone, but I tell you what, it's harder on me. I like to fly when it's pleasant and not when it's uncomfortable. So that's why this was the last flight of the day, and it was before lunchtime. It was getting warm and getting windy. I'm still awake there. You see me? So I saw those cows there in that little area where we put feed and hay and feed supplements. And then while I'm flying around, you may pick them out, you may not pick them out, but every now and then you'll see 3 or 4 cows wandering along, and they're always looking for something to eat. That's all they do is seemingly is eat and make piles. And there off in the distance, you can see Big Round Mountain. You've been there before with me. And there's the cow still there, hoping somebody will bring them some food. We'll climb up here to the max altitude and take a peek around the countryside, see what's going on, and in a second we'll do a return to home. I do like those green pathways that the RC2 controller gives you. It's kind of a neat effect. I guess you can tell by the strap that's flapping there that the wind had gotten up a little bit. And there we're home. Here's that landing if you want to watch that. And we made it. Well, how about that? Anyway, here at the conclusion, well, a couple things I'd like to do. First of all, I did a shout out for Sean the Drone. Another one of my favorite YouTube channels with droning is We're the Roberts. Kevin over there does a really fun job of demonstrating drone things. He's a good guy, kind of a hero. He was in a profession that I kind of really respect. And when you get a chance, go over and check out We're the Roberts. Also, like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell, click the thumbs up or up yours, or they call it in Europe, I guess. And let us know how you feel about the 107 situation. You know, it's kind of easy for us to say who already have a 107. It's easy for us to say raise the requirements. But my concern is how bad an image we're getting from the guys that just do dumb things with drones. And I'll put a link down to my drone jerk video so you can go back and take a look at what I'm talking about, some of the things that people do with drones that make us all look bad. It's really unfortunate it happens. In the meantime, thanks for stopping by. Really appreciate it. If you leave us a comment, let's get a discussion. Let us know how you feel about the 107. And in the meantime, God bless. We hope to see you soon. See you later.